You're listening to the Trailblazers Podcast, episode 22, with Lorine Pendleton.
You're listening to the Trailblazers Podcast, where we will explore the stories of successful Black professionals. Join us as we highlight the knowledge, resources, and tools of these accomplished trailblazers to help provide the know-how, confidence, and motivation you need to blaze your trail. And now, here's your host, Stephen Hart.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode. For today's interview, we've got Lorine Pendleton. For those that have not heard of Lorine, she's a seasoned business development executive with extensive experience in the legal, internet, and entertainment industries. She's presently the U.S. Director of Business Development for the largest global law firm in the world, Dentons. And she's a former practicing attorney at Macmillan, PC, which is a leading entertainment boutique law firm where she structured and negotiated multifaceted entertainment and media deals on behalf of clients such as Prince, Spike Lee, Rough Riders Records, Faith Evans, Stevie Wonder, and Shaka Khan. Lorine is also an active angel investor who invests and advises women and minority-led companies. She was named by Marie Claire as one of the 50 most connected women in America, and also named among the 20 angel investors you should know by Black Enterprise magazine. She's also been featured in numerous publications, including Fast Company and Forbes, and frequently speaks about entrepreneurship and raising capital. In today's episode, Lorine and I talked about the biggest things she learned about herself while working at Macmillan PC. We discussed her very interesting transition from being a practicing attorney through to her present role at Dentons. We talked about the process of becoming an angel investor. She explained what an angel investor is and does. We talked about the most important metrics that she looks at as an angel and what helps her in her decision making and deciding whether she's going to take action and invest with a founder. Lorine gets deep into a host of resources for entrepreneurs and startups to consider, looking into, and she shared a few lessons that Black women and minority founders need to know to grow their business. There's a wealth of information that you will absolutely want to be prepared to take notes about midway through today's episode. Definitely a must listen for all startups, aspiring, and even existing entrepreneurs and business owners. You don't want to miss out on today's wisdom. Hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Today on our show, we are so excited to have a conversation with Lorine Pendleton. Lorine, welcome to the show, and thanks for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want everyone listening to know that, despite all your past and present success, that you're still just a regular person. Could you tell us something that's not polished for media consumption, but is 100% Lorine?
Kind of on my spare time, I'm an avid foodie, so I love to check out the new hotspot restaurants that are happening. I follow a lot of chefs, and also I'm a great home cook. I've taken culinary classes, and so,
nice.
In an ideal life, I would be kind of like an Anthony Bourdain, have a restaurant and then travel the world. So that's really something I'm really passionate about.
Well, if ever you end up in Jamaica, I'll have to have my dad prepare you a good meal. My dad's a chef by trade as well.
Sounds good. Aki is on the menu. Is Aki on the menu?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You like some Aki and sawfish?
I do.
Nice. So, I've read up a lot about you, and you have a very interesting bio and backstory. And I was curious right from the jump, what was your dream as a child? Did you always have dreams of being a lawyer?
Actually, no. As a child, I wanted to be a brain surgeon. And
really?
Yeah, I did. But that all changed. My dad, who's a computer engineer, brought home an IBM, the first IBM personal computer. He brought it home. And so I think I was about 12 or 13, and totally got hooked. And I learned how to program. I program in BASIC. I'm totally dating myself here. But that was kind of opened up a door in terms of technology and my love for technology, and that kind of shifted things. So I ended up going to college, and I wanted to be an engineer when I entered college, and I did engineering for my first year. I went to Brown. Then after that, I changed change degrees. I ended up majoring economics and computer science. So ended up doing that, and then kind of on spare time as my extracurricular activities, I was a radio DJ for WBRU at Brown. And that was a college commercial station, one of the only few college commercial stations in the country. So basically all of the all the DJs were college students at Brown, but then we had professionals who ran the station, sales team, and that kind of thing. So we would go to events in Providence and kind of was a radio personality in Providence. So I did that outside of my day-to-day college experience, and that actually gave me the kind of the entertainment bug. And I ended up, after graduating, I went to the record industry, and I worked for Capitol Records, their jazz label called Blue Note Records, and I started my career there, and it was a really, really a great experience. Was there for a couple years, and I was always considered going to grad school. So at that point, it was a toss-up between business school or law school.
Right.
And I asked my mentor, who ran the label, president of Blue Note Records, Bruce Lumble, I told him I wanted to have a career in entertainment, but I wanted to go to grad school. And I asked him, should I go to business school or should I go to law school? And he said verbatim, if you want to have a career in entertainment, go to law school. That's a business degree you can have. And I took those words to heart, and I thought that was really great advice. And so I didn't want to, it's really hard to get in the entertainment industry, and I got in and doing internships, and I got in, finally landed a job. So I went evening division while working full time. I went at night, 4-year program, and worked at, after that, after Blue Note, during the time I was going to law school, I worked at another record label and ended up working at William Morris Agency, which is a big talent literary agency. We represent a lot of celebrities and well-known people, and I was there for a number of years, and I graduated, and I happened to land at a law firm, a boutique entertainment law firm, and the firm was called Macmillan PC, and it was basically this young African-American attorney who had some really amazing clients in the record industry, and it was an opportunity of a lifetime to go work for him. His big client and his big claim to fame was Prince, and he was the one who emancipated Prince. He got him out of his agreement with Warner Brothers, and that was his first client. Yeah, wow. Absolutely. And I was fortunate to work for Londell, and we had other clients as well. And it was just really a great experience. So that was kind of my first job, legal job as a lawyer at a boutique entertainment law firm.
Wow, I did see that, and it was pretty amazing to see, the law firm working with clients, as you mentioned, Prince. I also saw Spike Lee and Stevie Wonder, and all these big names, right? And
absolutely.
What were the biggest things you learned about yourself in your time there at Londell Macmillan PC?
So I think I learned a lot. Actually, I learned a lot from Londell. And he was, like I said earlier, he was this young African-American attorney, and he actually launched his firm with Prince. I mean, basically, Prince was his first client, which is unheard of. And
wow.
Yeah, no, he was working at another law firm, and he, through his contacts and network, got to meet Prince, and Prince was looking to leave Warner Brothers and, was looking for representation. And he connected with Londell. Londell basically, launched his law firm working, as Prince as being his client. And this is a lot to be said about Prince, and, rest in peace. And he was an amazing artist, an amazing person, is that he gave people an opportunity, and people of color. And so he hired Londell. And Londell was the one who got out on his agreement with Warner Brothers, which a lot of people know about. And Londell built a law firm, and most of the attorneys were people of color. And what I learned was that, we had a lot of our clients were African American, people of color, and we would go into rooms with record executives who were they were all white males, basically. And here was this young attorney, African American, grew up in Brooklyn, but just was really fighting on behalf of his clients, who were mainly black. And we all know the record industry, is not necessarily the easiest, or, it's a business, and they they make money off of, I wouldn't say exploiting, but definitely they make money off of artists. And Londell would, zealously advocate for his clients. And what I learned was, and oftentimes I'm the only black person of color, sometimes the only woman in a room, but I learned from him, he could walk into a room, and because the clients he represented, people would listen and stop and listen to him, and, just kind of carry yourself a certain way, and you own it. And that was those are lessons that I've taken. That was a lesson I had taken since working with him, and I was pretty young when I worked for him. I was in my 20s, and I just saw how he conducted himself, carried himself, and a lot of it is having confidence and knowing your worth. And knowing your client's worth. And so that was, I think, the largest lesson for me.
Yeah, I'm thinking that had to be a big confidence booster in your early 20s, right?
Absolutely. And he would take me to meetings, and he would just say, I just want you to come to a meeting. You're not going to say anything. I would take notes. And, it was all about, he just liked my presence. And I worked in entertainment for a long time. And so it was just a really great learning experience for me.
So why transition from being a practicing attorney, to where you presently are, right, with Dentons? What enticed you to follow that path and after all that success? So we'll go a step back before even we touch upon Denton. So while I was working for Londell, this was kind of the whole Internet 1.0 version of the Internet. You had companies like MP3.com and Napster. They were merging. They were music-focused file-sharing sites. And there was this whole convergence of, technology meeting entertainment. I was always really comfortable with technology. As I mentioned, I learned how to program when I was a teenager and did that when I was in college. And working with Prince, he was getting into basically distributing his own music. He launched a couple of websites where he was distributing his music directly to consumers, not streaming. This was before streaming, but, kind of e-commerce site where people could buy his CDs at the time. And I saw this convergence of entertainment technology, and I saw that was going to be the future. And I had a chance opportunity. I was out with some friends having drinks, and I met someone who knew someone who was starting a startup that was focused on, basically licensing their technology for entertainment companies. And, I took a leap of faith, and, they gave me equity in the company. They were looking for people at entertainment contacts. And so I joined on basically doing business development for this startup. And, it was an opportunity, and so that's kind of how I jumped into kind of business development, but I was doing it for startups. Unfortunately, the company I joined, we only had like a runway of about a year or so, and they were definitely ahead of their time. I think if they were around maybe 4 or 5 years later, they would have been highly successful, but they had great technology, and so they folded after a year. So I found myself at a crossroads. I go back to practicing as a lawyer, or do I, continue on this internet startup path? And I saw that may not have been the right company, ahead of their time, but there was a lot of stuff going on in the whole internet space. So I said, I'll continue in the internet space. I joined a company called Community Connect. They were actually one of the first social networking players. Before Facebook existed. Their claim to fame is they created social networking websites for the ethnic community. So they have BlackPlanet.com, Asian Avenue, Mahente, which was a Latino website. And basically, they were social networking where people can come and connect with others based on their ethnicity. And they had about 200 million registered members. And my job was to go and get advertisers who wanted to reach that market, that ethnic market, but also online. And again, this was before the internet is as prevalent as it was, but because of their sites are very sticky, people would use their sites a lot. They would spend on average about an hour at a time on their website. And so it was really an interesting time because this was the infancy of the internet and social media, social networking. So I was there for a number of years. And then I left to join another firm, another kind of startup called Select Minds. And they were a B2B social networking platform, but B2B. So they would create social networking platforms for companies. So
professional service firms, using the model of like McKinsey, where they keep in touch with their alumni who go on and become decision makers and buyers of their services. So basically, we would go to law firms, investment banks, IT consulting firms, the big four, and say, you have these massive classes that come in. You need a way to connect with them, your alumni network, because about 5% of them will be decision makers. And so we created their whole platform. So it was a software company, and I was director of sales, and that was a great experience. Both of those companies were sold, and, kind of the story was I worked for this initial company, Mind Echo, the first company that I started out in startups, and it folded, but I learned a lot about, business models and what it takes to create a business and how you need revenue. And then the other two were sold, and so that was my first kind of entree into the startup world, and then business development. And when I was working at Select Minds, a lot of the companies we were going after, organizations or firms, were law firms, where law firms hire a certain amount of people every year. You fast forward 7 years down the road, they don't, they come in with income and class. People have left, but they've gone on and they're doing some interesting things. So you need to create a platform for them. And so during that experience, I saw that there was at the big law firms, you had business development executives. And again, had an opportunity to go join a firm, and that was my first entree into working at a law firm, but on the business development side, and that was about 12 years ago. And so that's how I kind of ended up at doing business development at a law firm.
Wow, that's awesome. A very eclectic path to where you are. So, I'm curious. With all that happened, were there mentors that you had? I know you mentioned having mentors in the past prior to Lundell, but did you have guiding advisors along the way, kind of helping you through these different career stops?
So I had I wouldn't pinpoint and say I had like one mentor per se, but I definitely, when I was making moves or I was contemplating about doing something, I'd reach out to people in my network and would ask what they think about it. I mean, my dad certainly would reach out to him, and, he was in corporate America, had been in corporate America for a number of years, and so he was definitely someone I would bounce things off of. But also just people I met, from college or just people in my professional circle, definitely would bounce things off of them, and kind of just cultivating my network and getting input and different perspectives from people. So I can't say I had a mentor per se, but I definitely had people in my network who would guide me and give me some guidance. Right.
Or personal mentors.
Absolutely. Personal mentors. Exactly. Kind of my personal advisory board, if you want to call it that.
Absolutely. So today you're now an active angel investor. And I've read a bunch that, you invest and advise women and minority-led companies, and you're alumna of Pipeline Angels. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
So was it through these different jobs that you had that, you began learning about the investor side and the process of being an investor? How did that come about?
So I think because I had been exposed to the whole startup world, it was something that, I was very interested in. And in retrospect, I look at the organizations I worked for, particularly working for Lundell. He was his own firm, very entrepreneurial, built his firm from scratch. So I was exposed to entrepreneurs, and then working at startups. So I was definitely exposed to the entrepreneurial world, and I missed that world. But I think the connecting dot for me, so I've been thinking about that in the entrepreneurial world, and I wanted to actually kind of combine my business development experience, my legal experience, startup world experience, but I didn't quite know how to do that. But one of the things that happened, and I say the universe conspires, is that, Soledad O'Brien, when she was on CNN, did this series, Being Black in America, or Black in America, and she focused on, basically, she followed this class, the New Me Accelerator program, and they basically had about, I think it was 10 African-American entrepreneurs, and they sent them to Silicon Valley, and they were basically in this accelerator program, and they met with people in the Valley, and she had said a stat that just resonated with me, that, African Americans get, in terms of funding, VC or angel or whatever, just external funding, 1%. And I just thought that was abysmal. And I had worked at startups where we had gotten funding, and, I knew it was possible. And particularly at Community Connect, which was like focused on the ethnic market and diverse market. And I just thought that was just abysmal and just really horrible. And so I said, I want to change that, and I want to figure out. I wanted to mentor entrepreneurs, also provide funding, but I didn't know how to do that. And like I said, the universe conspires, and I would get an email. I'm a subscriber to this startup company for women, Daily Worth. They send emails to women about finances and financial information. And one day I got an email. It's a daily email, and they highlighted Pipeline Angels, and they interviewed the founder of it. And she was running a nonprofit for a number of years for women entrepreneurs, and the overriding kind of pain point for these entrepreneurs was lack of funding. And she kept hearing it over and over again. And she said, and she looked at it, did a deep dive, and, the reason why a lot of these weren't getting funded is because people make the decision, pattern matching, are white men. And so she decided that if she can create more women angel investors, they'll have a high likelihood of investing in women.
Women, right.
So I joined the program. 2013, I was in the program. I had a cohort. It was in New York, cohort of 10 other women who were incredible from all different industries, legal, finance, real estate. And we learned together, it's a boot camp, how to become an angel investor. So we have mentors who were VCs, lawyers who were in the space. And, as part of the program, we learn, and then we also invest, and we had to agree, all of us had to agree to invest in one company unanimously, and we did that. And that was just a really great experience for me. And that kind of launched my my angel investing career.
Right. So let me pause you right there. Could you maybe explain for some of those listening who aren't familiar maybe with what an angel is? Could you explain what an angel investor is and does?
Sure. So an angel investor is someone who invests their own money, usually in early stage companies. And the difference between, a lot of people use angel investors and VCs interchangeably, but really the difference between an angel is that there's someone who invests his or her own money to an early stage company. It varies. It could be from $10,000 to, $500,000 or $1 million, depending on, those are pretty much super angels at that high end, but they invest their money themselves or together in an angel group. Whereas as VC, they invest other people's money. So they typically have a fund and they're investing in it, and they're a general partner, so they make the investment decisions, but the people who invest in the fund are limited partners, and they invest in a number of companies, and they have a portfolio. So as an angel investor, I have my own portfolio, but it's money I've invested in, my own money that I've invested. Typically, all angel investors have to be an accredited investor. That's basically regulations by the SEC. You have to make a certain amount of money or have a certain amount of net worth, but things are changing a bit now with the whole crowdfunding. The Jobs Act was just put into effect, Title III of the Jobs Act. So now that companies, entrepreneurs can now crowdfund, and they can go, you don't have to be an accredited investor. So that's another area that's also really exciting and interesting for entrepreneurs to kind of tap into.
Right. So now being an angel investor yourself, what are some of the important performance metrics that you're looking at and helping you to decide whether you're going to take action and invest with a founder? Is there specific things you're looking at?
Yeah, no, I definitely have specific things. So one of the things, there are multiple things. I'll go through each of them. So I always look at, someone has a product or service. What is the problem they're solving? Right. What's the pain point? What's the pain point and what's their solution?
So what's the product market fit?
Product market fit, basically they have to be solving a problem. Is this a business where people are is this an idea where you can launch a business so people will buy your product or service? So you're addressing an issue, you're addressing a problem, you're addressing a pain point, and you have a great solution for it. The other thing is how large is the addressable market? So, you could have a small market, you're addressing a pain point, but it only affects like 10 people. That's not enough to build a business on. Maybe for you, a lifestyle business, but as an investor, the only way I make money is
if it can scale.
Can scale it, but also an exit. So you can exit ways. where I can make money. My return on my investment is either IPO, which are very rare, or you're acquired. So I have to look at, so companies are going to be acquired or IPO, you have to be highly scalable. So you look at the addressable market. How big is this market? That's really important. And on scalability, can a company scale? And what that means is you start out small, and can you build your company and grow it so that you actually, as you get bigger, the cost of you running your business gets smaller. And so you're able to scale it, and you're able to have the funding or just, either revenue or outside funding to grow it and make it big, make it really big. I mean, VCs they want $1 billion business to invest in. Angels, not so much. I mean, angels, you can look for a business that'll be $100 million business, and I can walk away, because I got in early stage, I can walk away with a decent return.
Right.
I also look at what's the competition out there. It's actually okay to have, people have this misconception that, if someone else is doing it in the space, it's not good. There's tons of companies that have competitors. I think there's very few companies where, or you have an idea where no one's ever thought about it, a company doesn't exist. I think the key is, are you improving on something that already is out there in the marketplace, and how are you doing that? And that's really important.
Right.
And how do you differentiate yourself? That's really important. How's a company, what are they doing differently that their competitors are not doing? So that's kind of how I look at the company and the business model, and can it be a business? Can it go from an idea to a business? But what's really important for me is the founder, because you can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't,
the wrong person executing.
And there's an investing adage, and it's bet on the jockey and not the horse. And again, it's basically, you can have the best company, but the founder's not good, and it's not someone who can execute on the idea, it will not succeed. Conversely, if you have an okay or average company, average business idea, but the founder is amazing, he or she can execute well, they know how to pivot when necessary, they're coachable, you can have a home run. And so for me, I spend time with the founders. I have to believe in them. And also, as an entrepreneur, it's really hard. I mean, it's a hard life. You're getting people to believe in your dream. And so they have to have the ability to sell investors, sell employees to jump on their bandwagon and their dream, and customers. So do they inspire people? And that's really important for me. And the companies I've invested in, every meeting I have with the people I ultimately invested in, I was inspired by them. It's something that's it's not tangible. It's just you either feel it or you don't. And all these other things, absolutely, I do my due diligence, and I make sure, the company has the right customers, and, the addressable market is large enough. But initially, I have to be sold by the founder. And that, to me, is my litmus test.
Got to have that right gut feeling, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. But you can't just rely just solely on your gut. But that's like the first. No,
absolutely not. Right.
That's kind of the first hurdle. If I don't have that, if I don't have that kind of feeling inspired, I'm not going to invest in you.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's very very informational. What, with all that you have going on, we didn't talk much about your day-to-day with Dentons, but how do you keep from falling into and getting stuck in comfort zones with work? And what do you do to push yourself to new and higher heights?
That's a great question. I think, I'm fortunate. I'm at a firm that's growing very rapidly. We're the largest law firm in the world, and we've had a lot of expansion and doing a lot of different things. So, definitely I don't ever get in a rut. It's more of just kind of looking at priorities and what do I need to prioritize each day, and being focused on that. But that aside, also looking at how can I challenge myself as a professional, and I feel like the learning curve should never flatten for a professional. I think that you should always be learning. The marketplace is ever changing. You should read. I read the Wall Street Journal every day. I read certain, publications. I get newsletters just to know what's going on, and that's really important. And I think, as a professional, you have to constantly evolve, particularly now. I think in this day and age, things are rapidly changing. The law firm world is not how it used to be. You have organizations and firms that are entering the market, they're disrupting it, and you got to stay one step ahead, and just kind of always be a constant learner.
Right. And so, it actually is a great pivot to my next question. You're now an advisor and an investor to startups, right? I'd love it if you could maybe share a couple of fundamental lessons that Black women, minority, run businesses that are on the come up that are listening to this episode today, maybe what they'd need to know to lay, a better foundation to build and grow their business and possibly raise funds.
So, you touched on a great point, particularly for African Americans. Right now, it's really difficult to raise money, and I'm not, I'm on that side of an investor, and part of what I'm doing is to level the playing field, and I want to create opportunities by giving capital to diverse entrepreneurs. There was a study that just came out recently, Project Diane, came out a few months ago. They looked at the landscape for, just different entrepreneurs and companies, and basically 24 out of over 10,000 companies, only 24 Black women founders were able to raise money. So it was it's about 0.2%. But listen to this. This is that's horrible. But they looked at how much money on average were these companies that were able to raise money. So of that 0.2% that were able to raise money, how much were they raising? On average,
of what everyone else was getting.
They only raised $36,000. Wow. Versus an average white male-led company raised $1.3 million. So I just want to put that in perspective as a kind of a starting point as I give my advice, and it's not by any means to dissuade anyone, because we know, it's a challenge, but...
Is it lack of knowledge?
No, it's pattern matching. That's the whole thing. If you look at people who are giving money, they're white males. So, they give money to people they know who look like them. They're looking for the next Mark Zuckerberg. My whole thing is I want to find the next Black, Latino, diverse woman Mark Zuckerberg, and I know they exist. You know what? They haven't had the opportunity, and I look at the companies I've invested in. Had it not been for me and some other people, they've gone on. A number of my companies gone on, and they've raised Series A, VCs, but they had revenue, and at the time when they were going for their initial raise and their seed round, they weren't interested. Had it not been for the circle of women and other people in my network funding them, they would not have gotten that Series A. So I want to level the playing field. So back to your original question in terms of advice. So I'm kind of painting a picture, and again, I don't want to dissuade people, but I want people to have the reality that exists out there. So all these things that I mentioned in terms of what I look for in a company, you really need to know your market in and out. But there's other alternatives besides going to angel investors and VCs. There's a ton of grants, government grants that exist for small companies. So definitely research grants that are out there. They have the Small Business Innovation Research Program. You've got the Business Technology Transfer Program. A number of economic development agencies. You have them on a state and federal level. They exist, and they're dedicated to helping businesses start and grow and succeed. So these are resources that you can look at. And then the other thing is business plan competitions are huge. You have them at schools or all, there's so many business competitions. You have them in schools, you have companies that are doing that, and they're basically, you pitch and you can get, from $10,000 to Verizon. Their Powerful Answers competition, one of the companies that I was on the board of, she won their $300,000 grant. They give up to $1 million every year. So I encourage your listeners to, take a look at Verizon Powerful Answers competition. So they give the highest prize is $1 million. The lowest prize is $250,000. But there's a ton of companies and corporations that have business competitions, so that's another way. Then you have a proliferation of accelerators. There's tons of accelerators that exist. And basically, for people who don't know what accelerator is, they're basically venture programs that will give a small amount to a startup that will fund it. But basically you're going in and it's kind of a boot camp. You have access to their contacts, their network. They'll take a part of your company, usually about 5%, 3 to 5%. But again, you've got some really great accelerators out there: Y Combinator, Techstars, Dreamit, Founders Institute, 500 Startups. And those are kind of the big players, but there's a ton of other accelerators. So definitely take a look at that. The other thing I mentioned, I touched upon earlier in our conversation is, particularly with the Jobs Act, the passage of the Jobs Act, which now allows non-accredited investors to invest. From what I've been reading, a lot of women, and I would probably, I don't know for a fact, but I think if a lot of women aren't taking advantage of it, as many women aren't taking advantage, I'm sure a lot of diverse entrepreneurs probably are not taking advantage as well, is there's a ton of, these crowdfunding websites. They usually work with when you have a product, but they're out there and you need to definitely, entrepreneurs need to take a look at those. And they have some that are very, specific. So Circle Up is focused on, consumer products. You got Kickstarter, they're focused more on creative projects. And you've got like Portfolio, that's for women. You've got AngelList, which is more of a general crowdfunding site. But there's a ton of crowdfunding sites out there, and people should definitely take advantage of that. So I think now is a really exciting time for entrepreneurs, even though as a diverse entrepreneur, you see the stats and it's not that encouraging, but there's a lot more alternatives to the traditional route of raising money.
Lorine, I'm going to have to be like writing a blog post on all the resources you just shared. That's such a wealth of knowledge right there. Thank you. That was awesome. By the way, for everyone listening, this is going to be posted on our show notes page. And so don't worry, you'll be able to extract, I'm going to try and extract as many links to many of these grants and sites that Lorine is mentioning right now. Lorine, what can we look forward to, with you? Any big dreams or goals on your vision board as you look on to the next 10 years?
Sure. So I've seen just, the past few years, kind of the impact I've had with, the investing and the mentoring of entrepreneurs. But, I'm only one person. And right. I'm a big believer in, I look at companies that are at scale and I want to scale myself. And so I'm in the near future, I'm looking, and I've been in talks discussing with people. I want to launch a diverse fund that's going to raise money from investors who want to have a cut of it. And, I'll go out and source, great entrepreneurs and vet them and invest in them. And, that's something that I want to do, within the next year or so. I'm actively focusing on that. And is
that something separate from starting your own VC?
Well, so VCs are, I wouldn't start a VC right now. I don't have the track record to do that, but you have these micro funds, early stage funds that you can create. So I do that, and I have some successes, and ultimately I would start a VC fund. But, start small and you get bigger. So my long-term goal would, absolutely have a VC fund. But in the interim, I think there's a lot of companies that are out there, diverse entrepreneurs are not at that level that they would get VC funding right now. So I need to go where the market is. Again, the addressable market is early stage companies. And so creating a vehicle from them. And then, as these companies grow and they have exits, and then you create an ecosystem where you have VC funds that are going to be funding them. But we're not at that point yet. There's a couple of outliers who are getting money. But right now, I think the need is for early stage companies. So a micro fund and take it from there. And then also, most recently I was at the Black Enterprise Entrepreneur Summit. I was a speaker, and earlier in the month I was a speaker, and I judged their pitch competition. And, it was over 1,000 people. And, my panel I talked about, it was a women investing in, Black women panel. And I gave some really great advice. And afterwards just swarmed by the women that were there and just wanted to talk to me afterwards. And there's such a need. I think there's about 1.4 million Black women who are entrepreneurs, and it's the fastest growing
segment of entrepreneurs right now.
Absolutely. But yet I gave you stats, the least funded, and I want to change that. And I think by helping positioning these companies with their business model and providing resources for them. And so that's another idea that I have in terms of, just kind of how can I create a platform where I can educate, diverse entrepreneurs, providing resources. And there are a lot of people who have great ideas, and actually we're in business making revenue, and, just talking to them briefly, I'm like, you could do X, Y, Z, and you could scale, and you could do this. And so that's another thing that I want to do.
Right. Well, listen, I firmly believe that you're going to fly by this micro fun thought
and just go big, because I know and I believe that, one of these bets, one of these investments you've made is going to pay off big for you and provide you that foundation to take it to the next level and invest in so many more. I really love what you're doing, and I just think it's awesome.
Well, thank you. And what you're doing is great. I think this is a really, resource that you're creating, trailblazers, and interviewing people who are doing great things from different, entrepreneurs and people in corporate America. It's certainly something that's needed, and, hats off to you for that.
Thank you. So this part of our program, we like to be able to have you share some resources with our listeners to help them sharpen their minds. And I can't tell you, you've shared a ton of resources just now, but what's one book you've read in the past that has inspired you most?
So I'm going to give actually two books.
Sure.
So I think the first, in terms of just like for an entrepreneur, I highly recommend anybody who's an entrepreneur to read this book. And I actually picked it up. I was at the Angel Capital Association 3 weeks ago, their annual summit. And David Rose, he has a platform to raise crowdfunding platform called Guts. He's one of the founding members of New York Angels, which is one of the largest angel groups. And he's written several books, and I read his first book, for Angel Investors, and it's called Angel Investing. But he has a new book out called The Startup Checklist, Entrepreneur Startup Checklist. Highly recommend it. I'm actually halfway through it. It's great, like a roadmap. He basically, I highly recommend that for any entrepreneur, because he's invested in tons of companies, and this will save you a lot of, just from how you go from business, your idea of your business, how do you get customer feedback to really hone your business so that you can launch it using a lean startup methodology. You go to market, you iterate it, and then, corporate structure, how do you, get investors? I mean, the whole, like, from start to finish, it's pretty amazing. So I highly recommend that book. And then, just kind of from a book that that inspired me, was a book called Why Do the White Guys Have All the Fun? And that was basically a book, actually started as autobiography. Reginald Lewis, who was at the time, I don't know if he still was, but at the time, he was the wealthiest black man in America. He unfortunately died, I believe, in 1993, of brain cancer at 50. So he was in the midst of writing his book, and they finished it by interviewing his family and other, business associates, people who knew him. And what was really, the title says it all. His whole thing is like, he was on Wall Street. He was a lawyer, went to Harvard Law, Wall Street, philanthropist. He was CEO of Beatrice International, which was a big conglomerate. And his whole just like was relentless, work ethic, and just driven, and expected excellence of himself and other people. And unfortunately, he died an early death. But, he accomplished so much in his short 50 years.
Right.
I read that book actually when I was in law school, and it really, again, just kind of like working for someone like Londell, who actually won a Reginald Lewis. They have a foundation. Londell won an award. He won an award from the Reginald Lewis Foundation, 12 or 13 years ago. But just this guy was just such a trailblazer, and truly a trailblazer, because there were not a lot of him out there. It inspired me, and I think, I think all of us, need to strive for excellence. I think we fall down. We'll have roadblocks. We'll have people tell us what we can and cannot do. But he was relentless, and he knew that he could do well, and he excelled. And so, that was kind of, I think about that book. I have it. I look at it. I turn to it, some days when I'm having a rough time, and I get inspired by it.
Yeah, it sounds like it might spark you taking another read right now. So what is something small you've done this month that you're proud of?
I touched on it earlier. I think the Black Enterprise Entrepreneur Summit was really great. I was really honored. It was kind of like a full circle in my life. My dad would bring home magazines you know, when I was growing up, and he would make me read it cover to cover. And the two magazines I remember, I had to read Time from cover to cover, and then Black Enterprise, and we'd talk about it. And so for me to be, I've been featured in Black Enterprise twice in the magazine, and then to be invited to their summit and be one of the judges for their pitch competition, and then also speak on a panel, you know, that was pretty remarkable. But I got to meet, what I really loved is, beside that, kind of my full circle dreams come true, is that I got to see these amazing entrepreneurs who had great ideas. Some were just an idea phase, some were actually, you know, doing it and making revenue, and just we have a community out there that's doing stuff, and, you know, I want to do whatever I can do to help that community to grow and help them get funding, help them, you know, tweak their business model so they can scale that business. So I came back really inspired and knew that I'm on the right path, but I gotta scale myself. So yeah.
Well, that's a plug to definitely get me out there next year. I felt so bad that I wasn't able to make it this year, and I can't wait to be able to sign up. That's number one event on my list for next spring.
Highly recommend it, Stephen.
That'd be great. Lorine, can a trailblazer have too many goals?
You know, I think I'm all for, like, thinking big, dreaming big, but I think the reality is that what I found is that, you know, you really have to be focused. And so what I try to do, and just in my day-to-day is, and also just kind of my dreams and my goals, is that I think you have to have short-term goals, you know, kind of the immediate, it could be a month, 3 months, short-term goals, and then you also have long-term goals. So I think you have to kind of, I don't want to say have too many goals, but really you got to be focused on what you're doing. And so that's really important, is setting priorities and being hyper-focused. But I would also say don't be afraid to pivot or change your goals, because things can change, the marketplace can change, the environment can change, and just, you know, I think the key is being adaptable in everything you do, and also in your goals, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think, you know, I'm a big believer in kind of short-term goals, being hyper-focused, and then, you know, kind of think about where you want to go long-term, but having these, like, short, immediate goals. And also, if you have some wins with the short-term goals and get you closer to your long-term goals, you know, I think we want to have successes. So, you know, I think having a short-term goal is really realistic.
Right. So, Lorine, what's an online resource? It could be an app, software, or tool that you use every day and you can't live without it.
I mean, always email. Yeah, email is key. And then actually I use Evernote. Evernote is great. I read a lot, you know, or sometimes I can't always read. I mean, I'm busy, so I can't always read every single article, everything I get. So sometimes I skim things, but then, you know, I can, for people listening, Evernote is a great web clipping service or app. You know, you can catalog things, you can create notebooks. So I have like a whole, you know, thing on women entrepreneurs or diverse entrepreneurs. I can tag my things that I read, and so even I haven't read them at the time, but I can it's like a file. It's like you file them away, and then you can search for them. And so even when I was preparing for this, you know, today I was thinking about like kind of what my themes and what I want to talk about. You know, I have a ton of stuff that I've collected, and just, you know, I'm able to search it and pull articles quickly and get information. So that's a big app that I use every day.
Yeah, Trailblazers podcast listeners know that I'm a Evernote junkie, and I live and die. Everything in this podcast is all structured through Evernote, so I am in 100% agreement with you on that app for sure. Lorine, is it important to you to volunteer and give back with your time, talents, and treasures?
Absolutely. You know, I think probably before I started angel investing, I was very active in volunteering. You know, I sat on a number of boards. I was one of the board members for National Black Program Consortium. They're funded by PBS, and they fund filmmakers who are, you know, African-American experience, and PBS selects a number of those films to be broadcasted. And if they're not, you know, some of them have gone theatrical release, and so kind of initial funding for those films. I also was one of the organizers of TEDx Harlem.
Wow.
Created a nonprofit foundation surrounding that. I did that several years ago, and so that was all volunteer work and just kind of giving back to the community. But more recently, unfortunately, I mean, just kind of with the angel investing, I don't have as much time to sit on boards and be active in that way. But, I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs, and then people call me. I constantly, people reach out to me, and I see that there's definitely a need for people who want advice. And so that's why I'm looking at how can I scale what I'm doing, because I'm only one person and, just different ways. But so right now my focus is to help diverse entrepreneurs, and, I try to talk to as many as I can, but, it's difficult. But that's kind of what I'm focused on right now.
Awesome. So I am just so happy that I just stayed persistent with you. Listen, everyone listening, Lorine is one of the busiest people to try and track down. Busy lady, but a very smart and ambitious and resilient woman you are, with a wealth of knowledge. And I'm just so happy that we were able to capture your wisdom on this interview. As we get set to end today's session, I wanted to invite you to take a minute or two and impart some actionable, advice or an inspiring message that can help us gain some courage and blaze our own trail.
So I touched on it earlier. I think we'll all face challenges every day. We'll face a challenge, but I think, and we'll face failure, but that shouldn't define us. I think the key is, how do you respond to those setbacks? And that's what makes a trailblazer successful. And I've learned that over time. There's a time where I would have setbacks and internalize them and be frustrated, and they would derail me. And I just learned, that's a part of life. And you just got to kind of rise above it. And I think a lot of people, particularly in this day and age and this culture and kind of instant gratification, people see that, hey, someone's successful, and they don't know the struggles that people have gone through. And I've had setbacks in my career and just in general, but I've always had faith and belief that, I knew that I could make it, and no one ever dissuaded me from that. And I think if you can believe in yourself and know that, keep your focus, don't let anyone stand in your way, you're going to have setbacks, but it's a part of life, and it's how you overcome them, and that's how you'll be successful. So that's kind of what I believe in. And also kind of my last words are, I think always be prepared. Someone said to me, luck is opportunity meeting preparation, and I truly believe that. I think about my life and my career. A lot of it was I had opportunities because I met someone at the right time, but I was ready for that opportunity. And I think I was prepared for it, and I had done X, Y, Z, and then it's like the universe conspires, and when you make up your mind, it happens. And it's just, it continues to happen to me, and it's kind of mind-boggling, and there's signs, and so you just have to have faith and believe in yourself, and don't let anyone dissuade you. And it's okay to be scared, but don't let that consume you.
Great advice. Lorine, this is I'm just going to put it out there. This is going to be a bookmark episode for me. I'm going to mandate that every entrepreneur, budding entrepreneur, listens to this podcast episode, because I think you shared a wealth of knowledge that everyone really needs to take in and absorb. I hope everyone has their Evernote open, writing notes while they're listening to this episode today. And, we just appreciate you taking the time again to share your story with our community. And before we let you go, I wanted you to tell us how we can stay connected to you, and then we can finish up.
Sure. So, I'm on LinkedIn, Lorine Pendleton, and I'm on Twitter at Lorine Pendleton. So those are the easiest ways to get in touch with me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Keep doing what you're doing with Trailblazers. This is awesome. And good luck to all the listeners out there.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Trailblazers podcast. We'll be posting the links to Lorine's book recommendations, her resources, and social channels on our show notes page at tbpod.com/episode 22. Guys, before you sign off, please do me a favor. Open an email right now and invite someone to listen to this or any other episode you think might impact them most. Someone listening to one of these inspiring stories is going to be moved to make a change that impacts the world and so many others in the process. Don't miss next week's episode. We'll be sharing another unique story about a chemist turned entrepreneur, Dr. Marquita Qualls. For all my listeners in the STEM community, this is going to be a great interview for you. You won't want to miss the nuggets of wisdom Dr. Q has got to share. Trailblazers, jump off this podcast today. Go find a way to rise above, go way beyond, and keep blazing your trail. Cheers.